Then Sports Central, be giving you guys our 2024 season predictions for the Nebraska Cornhuskers, a team that went 5-7 overall in the 2023 season. This is a team with a lot of potential. Looking forward to 2024. Matt Rule, second year as the head coach. He's a coach that's proven to turn around programs. Could Nebraska be a potential dark horse in the Big Ten in 2024? And what can we expect out of the Huskers in this upcoming season? As we'll be talking about here today. We'll be looking at the players this team will be losing and returning and predicting their schedule top to bottom in this video. So with that, let's get started with a quick recap of 2023. Once again, the record being 5-7. This team went to Minnesota and then to Colorado back-to-back weeks to start the season. Both games were losses. This was an 0-2 start, which I feel like really came back to bite this team, honestly. They were 5-3 in late October. They were one win away from getting to bowl season for the first time in a long time. I feel like that 6-win barrier is significant for Nebraska right now, and if they could have won one of their first two games, I feel like this would have been a much different season. All four games in November were very winnable for this team. I just feel like it was that 6-win barrier kind of fell on this team, and the close losses really piled up there. But if they beat Minnesota week 1, which this team definitely should have, and if they could have been 6-2 heading into November, I honestly think that Nebraska would have won the West last year. I mean, this is a team that was good enough, especially on defense, to do so. And once again, all four games there in November were very winnable. I mean, this team could have definitely won at least 2 or 3 of them. So it can definitely be disappointing to think of this team that way, but at the same time, for this to be a 5-7 team that definitely underachieved last season, that's not a bad thing either, even though this team still dealt with glaring issues last season, especially on offense. But with that, let's look forward into 2024 now with your roster preview. Heinrich Haarberg's coming back. He was the top quarterback on this team last season, but honestly, the quarterback situation was just a mess for Nebraska. Jeff Sims, Chuba Purdy, and Heinrich Haarberg all split time, and none of these three quarterbacks really ever stood out. I mean, Haarberg maybe had a good game here or there. Jeff Sims was a turnover machine, and Chuba Purdy definitely showed potential at points as well, but just the inconsistency was a big issue. So the good thing is Nebraska's got Dylan Raiola coming in, 5-star quarterback out of high school. He originally committed to Georgia, and he flipped to Nebraska. Certainly one of the big stories of this offseason, and what a land for Nebraska. That, honestly, bringing Dylan Raiola in for the next few years under a Matt Rule coach team, that is a perfect combination. I feel like the future is really bright for this offense despite being pretty terrible in 2023. So Heinrich Haarberg is still around. Chuba Purdy, Jeff Sims both transferred out, and Dylan Raiola, it appears to be the starter for this team, but as a true freshman starting for a Nebraska team in what is a difficult Big Ten, there are definitely going to be some bumps in the road, I think, for Raiola in year 1, but I mean, that's to be expected out of a true freshman quarterback who's expected to start. In the backfield, Anthony Grant's gone. Emmett Johnson's coming back. Same with Gabe Irvin and Ramir Johnson. So the backfield's got some pretty good depth. It's just up to, can one of these guys stand out for this offense and be a true lead back? That's not something that we really saw last year. Anthony Grant was the top in the backfield with 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, but I mean, those stats really don't stand out too much. This receiving core really didn't have a big standout either. Billy Kemp was the lead receiver with only 300 yards last season. Thomas Fidone coming back, though. He's definitely a name worth keeping an eye on. Could be one of the best tight ends in the Big Ten this upcoming season. And then Jalen Lloyd, Alex Bullock, both coming back as well. So this team's going to have some experience in 2024 for sure. This offense definitely should be improved, I would say. I mean, in pretty much every area, the offensive line should be even better. Receiving core is going to have more experience, plus added a couple of transfers. Backfield's got good depth. So I think this offense is definitely built for at least an improvement in 2024. And this defense, though, that's really where I think this team is going to shine in 2024. This team's defense actually was really good last year. I would say one of the best in the Big Ten for sure. It was just the offense that was a huge issue. And so, I mean, this defense is going to be, once again, I think one of the best in the conference. You could probably say top 4, top 5 defense in the conference in 2024. It's just up to the offense. Can this offense turn things around and make this a more balanced team in this upcoming season? But with that, let's look at the transfer portal and recruiting now. Chuba Purdy off to Nevada. Jeff Sims off to Arizona State. Got Dante Dowdell coming in from Oregon. He's a name worth keeping an eye on in addition to the backfield. And then Jamal Banks, Isaiah Nayor, both coming in, both expected to be starters this upcoming season. And then you lose Chief Borders and Lynham to both to Pitt, but you do bring in Bly Hill for the secondary, who's expected to be a starter in 2024. Recruiting-wise, 18th in the country, 6th in the Big Ten. Really impressive class for Nebraska. Top 20 in the country. Got 7 4-stars coming in, 23 3-stars, and then obviously the 5-star in Dylan Raiola. So I'd say the future, honestly, is really bright for Nebraska. This is a team that hasn't made it to a bowl game since 2016. They've had a lot of offseason hype over the years, and it just hasn't come to light. But I feel like the tide is starting to turn for Nebraska. Matt Rule is a proven head coach who has done this over and over again. He did it with Temple, did it with Baylor. I'd say he's in a really good position to do it at Nebraska pretty soon here too, just based on the recruiting of this team, but also the fact that he's kept players around. This is a defense that's going to be one of the most experienced in the Big Ten this season. You maybe could say in the country as well. So, I mean, you consider that, the fact he's keeping players around, which is so important at this point in college football. I think this is a team with a really bright future. Got him at an 8 on the future forecast. But with that, let's take a look at the schedule as we look forward to 2024. And this is, I would say, another reason why this season is so favorable. This could be a 6-1 or 7-0 team going into Columbus there in late October. Those first 7 games are all extremely winnable for this team. They're at home in their first 4 weeks. It really sets up well for Nebraska to be pretty successful here. UTEP, Colorado, Northern Iowa, Illinois, and then Purdue, Rutgers, Indiana going into Ohio State. The last 5 games are definitely pretty challenging for this team. Ohio State on the road. UCLA is pretty beatable, but USC on the road, Wisconsin, Iowa, all could be challenging teams here in 2024. But looking at the first month, I mean, UTEP, I would say that's an easy win. Colorado, close win here. I do think Nebraska finds a way against the Buffs. I mean, Colorado kind of smacked Nebraska last season, but this is, I feel like, a much different season, and it's going to be a different situation this time around. Nebraska, it's going to be a night game. It's at home. I'm going to favor the Huskers there for sure. And then Northern Iowa, I'd say this is an easy win. Then Illinois at home as well, also a night game. Going to take Nebraska there in a close one. I think Illinois kind of puts up a fight, and it'll probably be more of a lower scoring matchup. I think their defense should be pretty good. Their offense, though, Nebraska should have an edge there. So got you 4-0 going into Purdue. Purdue could be one of the worst teams in the conference. I think that's an easy win there, despite it being a road game. Rutgers, though, is kind of a sneaky team that I think a lot are sleeping on here. I wouldn't be surprised if Rutgers maybe was a 7 or 8 win team in 2024. They're going to have some good experience. I think they'll be kind of a sneaky team in the conference this season for sure. But I do want to take Nebraska there in a close one. That's definitely not one to sleep on, though, that's for sure. And then Indiana on the road. I honestly considered taking Indiana here just because the road games have kind of come back to bite Nebraska over the years, but I just can't pick Indiana there. The Hoosiers are looking like a 3-5 win team in 2024, so I think that's still going to be a win despite it being close. So I do have Nebraska 7-0 going into Columbus, which once again, the first half of this schedule is so favorable. I'd say at the very least this should be a 5 or 6 win team going into Columbus there in late October, but that is where it ends. Ohio State is no joke this season. Wouldn't be surprised if they won it all, so I'm taking the Buckeyes there. So 7-1 going into UCLA. Think you take care of the Bruins. It'll be a closer game, but I really don't expect too much out of UCLA this season. USC on the road. USC is also a beatable team, but going on the road there, probably favor the Trojans. Wisconsin also beatable. But I'm going to favor the Badgers there just because Nebraska hasn't beaten them in so long. And then Iowa on the road, going to favor the Hawks there as well. So I do think he dropped 3 in November, but this is really not that difficult of a schedule when you look at it as a whole. I mean, Ohio State's easily the toughest game there. Otherwise, I would say most of these games are very winnable for the Huskers. I mean, November is definitely the toughest month, but it will be crucial, though, that this team is in a good position going into the Ohio State game. I feel like with November being as challenging as it is, it's definitely going to be important for Nebraska to be as close to being eligible to a bowl game as possible going into November there. But I got 8 wins for Nebraska this season. I feel pretty optimistic about this team, and as tough as this defense is going to be with an improving offense, I think the future is pretty bright for this team. And honestly, I would say the ceiling is 10 wins for this team as well, just with how winnable a lot of these games are. I do think this team at least takes 2 losses at some point for sure, but I would say 8 or 9 wins is definitely within reason for this team. I think 5-7 is the floor. Honestly, if this team misses a bowl game, it's crazy because Nebraska hasn't been to a bowl game since 2016, but just based on how favorable things are looking forward to 2024, it'd be very disappointing if this team didn't finally break through. But with that, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on Nebraska. What do you think of this team, and what can we expect out of Nebraska in 2024? And I appreciate you guys watching as always. My name's Evan, this is All Sports Central. Stay tuned for more. We'll catch you on the next one.